We're bringing on our first guest, and her name is Christine Pride. So we're going to sign her on. And this is her book. I have an arc of her book, All the Men I Loved Again. But because I'm going to be leaving, I'm going to wait and give this away on next week's show. So just be prepared. I'm not going to give you the trivia. So that would be cheating. So anyway, Christine, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. Thank you.
Okay, now this book, is this your first solo project?
It is. This is it. I wrote two books with Joe Piazza, and then this is my first solo. So it's very exciting.
Okay. And is that a hardcover?
It is. Yeah, this
Okay,
is.
so it came out in hardcover.
It did. Yeah, last week. It's 1 week old today. It's its birthday.
Right.
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to let you know that Rhonda will be handling the interview. I'm going to be signing off in a few minutes. I just wanted to let you know that in advance. Um,
Okay.
so, how did you go from writing, being a co-author, to going solo?
Yes, it's been kind of an evolution because I was a book editor for 20 years before even becoming a writer. So that's how I met Jo. She was one of my authors. So I published her book. So it's like a little bit of an incremental step. Like I was an editor and then I became a co-writer with Jo. That was a step. And we wrote two books together. And then I had this idea for this novel that became All the Men I've Loved Again that was inspired by my personal experience. And so it just was too juicy to not, I turn into a novel. So I did. And since it was kind of ripped from the headlines of my own life, it was such a personal experience. It was, made sense to tackle it myself. And I felt kind of ready to do so after, all these other steps. And it was exciting.
Well, I love how you just said just a touch. You just scratched the surface of what the book is about, and I'm already intrigued.
It's a little tease there in the business. So
Yes.
this book, All the Men I've Loved Again, is, as the title would suggest, it's about a woman who named Cora who dates two men back to back in her 20s and then falls for the same two men again in her 40s. Or as she's approaching 40. So how she makes the choice and what happens between these two men in both those different eras of her life. So half the book takes place in the past. It starts in 1999, last century. Uh, and then half the book is in present time in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is it kind of flashback or is it more chronological?
It's more chronological. So it's part one is called Then. And so that's in 1999 in the early aughts. And then we fast forward, there's a big jump to part two, and then we're jumped down in 2021.
Okay. So here's something about the profession. Do book editors have an inside track on getting book deals? Because probably one of the most famous book editors that became a smashing success as an author is Toni Morrison.
Of
But
course.
yeah, but there have been many others. So working in the industry for so many years, that probably gives you some insights.
Yes, it does give you insight. Meaning I think publishing can be an intimidating industry or a mysterious industry. People are like, what is happening behind the scenes and how are they making decisions and, who are these people and all that. So that did, knowing kind of what's behind the curtain did help, but it doesn't necessarily give you kind of an in or a leg up. Like I had to go through the process like any author would, right? Writing a book, getting an agent, having the agent submit it to editors, which is, just as nerve-wracking. I would actually say even more so because you actually know a lot of the people that are reading your book. Like if you're,
Right.
author in Nebraska or whatever, you can't picture who's doing it. I'm like, oh, I know it's Susie and Lindsay and Barbara, and so that adds a little layer because your colleagues, are reading and judging your work. So it was a
Yeah,
really good.
I
It's
can
really
kind of see how that would be a little bit more pressure because you can't make one mistake because wait, she's judging other people's work and now look
yes.
what she's doing.
Exactly. And also we're not all Toni Morrison, right? So it's like when others have gone before you with, the high level, or kind of what writers that you've worked with are capable of, right? And you
Hmm.
are working with
Hmm.
the best of the best in the publishing industry, which is like really exciting, but it's also, of course, really intimidating too.
Right. And then I also see it as a little bit of I don't know how I want to put it. When you're an editor, if you're let's say you're writing and you start typing and you realize that you made a mistake or that sentence didn't sound right, or maybe that character wasn't exactly what the way you wanted it.
Mhm.
Do you find yourself maybe stopping your writing process and then putting your editor hat back on in the middle of writing?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I don't think any more necessarily than other people do. I mean, you obviously going back and editing your work and revising is such a part of
Mhm.
the process. But I'm a huge believer that editors make a big difference in your work and everybody needs an editor. So I more so rely on my editor to do that. Like I really trust and believe in my editor for that second pair of eyes and to help
Right.
me spot holes and fix those sentences and deepen the characters and all of that stuff. And I am lucky that I know a lot of people in the publishing industry, so some of my friends, right, then can be early readers of the book and happen to be professionals. And so that
Right.
helps. No writer can produce work in a vacuum, right? We all need feedback along the way as we're working on our manuscript. And so I rely on it the same way to help me,
Right.
have
Nobody
a
nobody's
pair of eyes.
perfect. Even an editor is going to need an editor. I just see myself because I'm also an editor, and sometimes it's very hard for me to just write. Some people say, worry about fixing mistakes later, but if I know I made a mistake, it's going to bother me
Yeah, yes.
until I fix it. I really find it hard to continue to write because that mistake that I know I made, there are going to be some unconscious mistakes. But the mistakes that I know I made, I have to fix them before I can move on.
A perfectionist after my own heart. Yes, I totally get that. That is, I will do that. Or, just get really frustrated that something is not coalescing like you want it to. A scene,
Right.
character, or a piece of prose is just not, that frustrating feeling of you're just like not quite getting it. I definitely experience that, of course.
Absolutely. Now, your book, is it a fictionalized version or is this the nitty-gritty truth? This is how it happened.
No, it is very fictionalized. I did not want to write a memoir about my love life. I actually don't think that readers are that particularly interested in my personal love life. But fictionalizing it allowed me to raise the stakes, change the characters, add twists and turns
Right.
that didn't exist, in the actual events. And so beyond the premise, it really is very much a novel and very fictionalized, which again was the fun part, to do that, to
Well,
expand on the story and in any
Well,
way
I've
it
got
saw
to
fit.
say, you are a writer after my own heart because I'm the same way. I've always said I don't think I will ever write a straight memoir, but I don't mind taking some pieces from things that I may have experienced or things that I may have seen and just building a story around that. But you're never going to be able to figure out who Rhonda Lawson is by reading any of my books.
Yes. Got to protect the innocent and the guilty, right? I totally get
Absolutely.
that. Well, and I wanted to be respectful. It's true. I mean, I think all writers mine from their lives and, observations and so forth. I mean, that's the whole point of the gig. But it also, for me in this story, it was much more about the emotional truth of the experience. And that's what,
Right.
I carried with me because in dating two men back to back, 20 years apart, it really taught me a lot about how people change or don't. And it got me thinking a lot about fate and
Mm-hmm.
timing. And I think we all have, maybe that person out there where it's like, I wonder what could have happened, or I wonder what could have been.
Yes. I like to
And
call it the what if factor.
the what if factor, right? And by the time you get to your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, those what ifs accumulate. You
Yes,
a lot of
yes.
that.
Oh, I love it. I mean, yeah, girl, we could geek out all day on this.
Uh-huh. Sounds like you might have one or two that got away. So
Oh, girl, we're not even going. We have to talk about that another time.
offline. Celia.
So, well, now tell me, you were a co-writer and now you've written your story yourself, a single author story.
Yep.
Were there any differences that may have jumped out at you looking at the process for each of them?
Yeah, it was actually very different. And it's really hard to say because both of those experiences were new to me. So it's, when something is so new, it's hard to, have the context to compare.
Mhm.
And so, it was new and then I kind of got used to writing with Joe and then this is new and, you kind of get accustomed then to writing solo.
Right.
And so it's not even, apples to oranges. It's just like they're very different. And in some ways, writing by yourself is a lonelier process, right? Because you don't have that built-in person to bounce ideas off of on an ongoing basis, and feel
Right.
like you're working together, like you have a coworker or a team, in the trenches. But writing solo also gives you a lot of freedom, even logistical freedom, right? Like you're not beholden to somebody else, to say this chapter's due Friday, or I need to turn this around, or I need to get on a Zoom at this time to talk about this. So it's very different. And I think I'm glad I've experienced both because both have taught me a lot
Mhm.
about writing and, the process and, how what different skills and vulnerabilities even it brings out in both scenarios.
It does bring some vulnerabilities out because when you're writing, especially when you're writing a single author, even if you're writing, I've written in anthologies before, you don't know how the other writers in it that you're writing. You don't know their writing styles. You don't know what they're going through. So even when you're writing for an anthology versus writing your own book, you're kind of in a vacuum. You don't always know what the person is going to think. You're not going to be able to stand behind everybody who reads your book and explain to them what you
Exactly.
meant.
That's what I meant here. That's what I meant here. Yeah. Totally. If only.
Right. I wish I could.
Same. But
So
yeah, no, you're totally right. It's a very emotional experience writing, and that actually has been the most surprising thing to me. When Joe and I did our first book, and again, it was like my first time doing this, and especially after so many years as an editor, people would often ask, what surprises you? And that was always my answer, and it remains my answer to this day, that I just really underestimated the emotional component of being a writer and how much self-doubt and comes up, or how much discipline is required, how much self-talk and pep talks are required. And
right.
so yeah, and for every book, like I don't know that that's something that even by the 10th book or the 12th book, I mean, heaven help me if I get there, but that ever goes away. I think it's just an ingrained part of the process, that I'm sure even Toni Morrison felt on occasion.
I'm quite sure. I'm quite sure. But the good thing about it is, as I went to your website, I think that you're able to get a lot of reader feedback because you have a whole tour going on. You're
Yes, I do.
appearing in a lot of different cities. You're doing a lot for a book that's only been out for a week.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's been great. Yeah, I've been on the road, and that's the best part because it's so solitary and there's so much build up to publishing a book, so much happening behind the scenes. And then when it's finally out, and you get to talk to readers about it, it's like it has this whole other life because you've just been talking to like a small bubble of people about it who have read it. And I love to write stories, including this one, that are a launching point for people to talk about their own experiences.
Yes.
And so, I'm here for all of the juicy, heartfelt stories, right, of reconnections and second chance romance and lost loves and first loves. And so it's been really great for people to share their stories and get to talk to them.
So you've been noticing that a lot in your different appearances that people are accepting a book and then sharing their own stories of love.
Yeah, people, I mean, yeah, sometimes it's funny because people will not want to share in in the Q&A or like a group setting, but then they come to the signing line and they're like, "Oh, I wanted to tell you, like, one woman in Kansas City told me about she was on vacation in Italy, right, a million years ago and really connected with this guy and then, kind of found him recently on social media, I mean,
Nice,
like
nice.
it's interesting because it's often like a typical reconnection, meaning social media has given us a lot, or online or email or whatever, that a lot of people can track each other down that way. So that's kind of a common theme, but then each story is so unique, right, in terms of the circumstances around it and how long people have been apart or not in touch.
Very true. Now, how did you choose these cities? Because I looked at your list, and it's like all over. You've been to
Yeah.
Illinois, you've been to California. I think, was it Missouri you had been
Kansas City,
to?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
Kansas City, Missouri. Yeah.
yeah, I'm all over the place with across the country. Well, typically with book tours, I mean, they're all a little bit different for every author. But you usually start out with looking at markets that you have some kind of connection to, right? So like I split my time between New York and LA, so it made sense to, do events in
Right.
both of those places. I went to college at Mizzou, so University of Missouri, so I have like a Missouri connection. But then it's a matter of, what stores have availability for that week. Usually you're on tour the week the book goes on sale, so you kind of figure out a mix and match of like what
Hmm.
stores does it make sense to go to. And that kind of dictates the cities. And some authors have like a stronger hold like in the South, right? And we'll do events throughout the South or the
Right,
Northeast or
right, right.
whatever. So it's nice because everybody is so spread out that at least there's, kind of somebody for every kind of local community to have an author come to an event. And it's been nice because I think people want to go to author events. I do think that people
Yes,
um are now, I had two books come out in the pandemic, so that had been kind of my previous experience of touring. And so now it's just been nice to see that obviously post-pandemic, but also I think people just want to connect with people in real life, they want to go out
absolutely.
and like brush their hair and put on a dress and go talk to somebody. And
Right.
so it's
Put on real
it,
pants, you know.
yes, exactly. It's just grab a drink, whatever. So it's nice to give people the opportunity to do that. And short and sweet. I love these events actually because they're, usually like an hour and a half, so it's not like a huge time commitment.
Right, right.
But you can, still scratch that itch of going and having fun and, talking to another book lover. So I love that.
Now, your next event is going to be in Denver. Um, you're
Denver.
going to you're going to be speaking with Nicole McAteer with
Yes.
the Mile High Book Club.
Yes, I'm excited. It's, I try to do something like a little different in each event too. And so this is really, a fun way to bring a book club into the store, so the book club members
Hmm.
can have, I mean, it's obviously open to the public and anybody can come. But that'll be a fun component to it. And also the reason I'm in Denver is I teach at the university in the summer. I teach aspiring
Oh,
publishing
nice. Yeah.
professionals. And so they're all, students who want a career in publishing. And so I imagine a few of them will come to the event too. So it'll be fun to, that they can kind of see what that aspect of the business is like.
Love that. Well, now we do have a comment here. Mark Anthony Hall said that he wishes you the best and continued success in your journey.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And I need it. We all need it, right? Like it feels good to be
Absolutely.
cheered on, right? We got to cheer each other on, and particularly Black authors, the Black writing community, it matters even more to have that layer of encouragement and solidarity and community and connection. And I got your back. I'm going to buy your book. I'm going to support, spread the word, like that.
Right.
It really makes such difference. And so I'm really grateful for that.
I know, I really will say that I don't want to just say you're fortunate, but it's really nice that your book in just a short amount of time has had this much feedback and this big a reception.
Yeah, no, I think fortunate, it's the exact right word. I feel very fortunate. I feel, very lucky to have such a great publishing team behind me, that it takes a village, and authors can do a lot of work themselves. And obviously the best thing is to create the best book that you can. But beyond that, so much is out of your control, and you are at the mercy to some degree of publicists and marketing people, and at the end of the day readers, right? they have
Yes,
to
yes.
they have to come to your book, and they have to tell people about your book, otherwise it doesn't work. And so I feel really good about the reception so far, and that people are seem to be liking the book. And especially in this time period, a lot of people have just been telling me like this is the escape that I needed, or this is the type of like emotional read that I needed, where it's not a heavy book, it's a good beach read, but it's not without substance, right? Like things do
Right,
happen.
right.
And so I like that in when you were looking at the headlines and everything is like terrible,
Oh,
um,
yes. There's a
there's a
lot
little
going
bit
on
of
this
counter
year.
programming, yeah, that you can escape for an hour or two into a different story.
Beautiful. Now, I know that there was a lot of intention that went through planning your story and then planning the promotional efforts once the story was published, or even before the story was published. This didn't just happen in a vacuum. Can you share maybe a couple of your lessons learned
Yeah.
as you went through that process? Because we have a lot of authors who watch the show, and a lot of them would love to be able to have this same reception that you
Yeah.
had.
Yes, I think relationship building is really key. Get to know your local independent bookstores, right? They're on the front lines selling books, like hand selling to customers that come into the store, So getting to know popular bookstagrammers on Instagram, they have
Yes.
such a huge effect. And even, Black bookstagram, I compare to Black Twitter, maybe less hilarity and wisecracking, but just as powerful, like a force of supporting Black writers. And so I wrote personal notes to many book of my favorite Black bookstagrammers or bookstagrammers in general.
Oh, so
I
you
wrote
just reached out to them and just kind of slid into
yeah,
their DMs?
definitely. And I wrote handwritten notes that then I would track down their addresses and send with the copy of the book
I think
itself.
that that makes the difference because there are so many bookstagrammers and bookstores where authors are sliding into their DMs all the time, and then you get desensitized to it. They kind of ignore it, like, oh, here's somebody else promoting their book to me, and they may not listen to it. But for you to have written even a handwritten note or
Yeah.
a personal note that shows that this wasn't just a chat GPT form that I sent to 20 bookstagrammers a day.
Oh
I
no.
really want you to read my
I
book.
had hand cramps. I was because we don't write anymore, right? Like everything is typing. So when I sat to write these notes, I probably wrote 100 notes. So it was
Wow.
like I got to take a break. I got to, so but I do think, to your point, like that personal touch, it does make a difference, and it's very personal. It's not like to whom it may concern. And I reached out to people that I genuinely believe in their work. I think that they're doing a good job, supporting writers and spreading the word on Instagram. So that would definitely be one thing. And then the other thing is trying to do your own social media. And, I'm a work in progress at this for sure.
Mhm.
And, it is, it's like the advice that you give that you don't take, but so that's the hard part. But, I do think that whatever the complicated relationship I at least have with social media, it is here to stay in terms of being an integral part of how books are sold or how conversations happen, And so for this book, I tried to lean into that as much as possible. And not grumble about it all the time as I want to do, like Instagram, but just try to be positive about it as a tool. Okay, I can share this. I can share my unboxing video. I can share,
Yes, yes,
stuff like
yes,
that.
yes.
And it's outside of my comfort zone for sure. I'm not like a content creator, but it's worth doing. And so that's the other kind of piece of advice that I give, like, is to the degree that you feel comfortable, get online and start sharing your work or your
Right,
life
right.
or other
People like
book
to support people they
recommendations.
feel like they know.
Yes, exactly. That's
Yes.
exactly it.
All right.
Exactly.
I'm going to squeeze in one last question because I know
Yes,
we're
yes.
right up to the bottom of the hour. But A. Shakur asked, and I know your book is traditionally published, but
Mhm.
he asked for advice for a self-publisher like himself. He's a self-published author.
Yes. So more power to you. That's amazing to be a self-published author. It's kind of like writing a collab and writing solo, the comparison I made where they almost can't be compared, right? Because they're such their own thing and lane.
Mhm.
I will say the biggest difference between self-published or the thing that you have to do is what I just described, but hustle even harder, right? In terms of making these connections and reaching out to people. And you are in effect your own publicity and marketing person. And the great thing about that is you control the messaging, you get all the proceeds, right? You control so much of the process, the cover, the
Mhm.
timing, like everything is up to you. But the distribution aspect just means leaning more heavily on your networks, and even like old school, when people are selling
Yes,
CDs out of
yes.
the back of their cars, it's kind of like that mentality of driving to bookstores or going to festivals, right? Getting yourself into these different local festivals, the Gaithersburg Book Festival, right? In Gaithersburg, Maryland, like smaller
Yes, that's a big
festivals.
festival. I'm going to do it next year.
Oh, fun. Yeah. I
Yes.
mentioned that because that's where, I grew up in Silver Spring. So
Oh,
that's
okay. I
a
live in
local
Maryland.
festival. Oh, nice. Oh,
Yes, I
yeah.
used to live in Silver Spring. I live in Accokeek now.
Oh, nice. Oh, very cool. I love that local
Yeah.
connection. Yeah. So that's why I wrote the book is set in the DMV on the Virginia side, though. So it's
Okay,
not,
so now I really have to read
yeah.
it.
Totally. Well, I hope you do and enjoy it.
Well, so I would love to talk to you longer, but like I said, we are at the bottom of the hour. I want to congratulate you on your book. Can you show us the book one more time
Yes, of course. Oh my God, I
and let
haven't.
us know where
I only wear
we can
pink
find
now,
it?
so I match my book at all times. But
There
thank you,
you
I thank
go.
you for having me, and I hope people check it out, and I hope people keep in touch. I know you mentioned there's obviously a lot of writers that are going to be watching this, and so please don't
Yes.
hesitate to reach out to me on Instagram. It's at C Pride, or email me. I'm always happy to help, advise, give a pep talk, whatever. So I'm so glad to be here.
Awesome, awesome. And we also put your website in the chat, so
Oh,
hopefully
great.
everybody will click on that link and let's support this book. It's only been out a week and it's doing amazing. So congratulations once again, Christine.
Thank you so much. It was really fun to be here. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.